Hello students, in this video we are going to do the explanation and reading of your 7th story, that is The Little Match Girl. So without wasting any time, let's get down with the explanation. The writer of this story is Hans Christian Andersen, and you can understand that he is a very good Danish writer who is also known for his fairy tales. Even in this particular thing, he has mentioned the visions and you can say a fantasy world of this young girl, but at the same time the pathetic end of the young girl, though we call it as a pathetic end, but for her it was deliverance from all her pains and miseries. So for her, we might say that the new year brought sadness that the young girl died, but for that young girl it was more of a happy ending, because now she was with her grandmother, with her god, and she was in eternal peace where she had knew no cold, no hunger. And that is why for her it was like a deliverance. She was free from all these bondages and all these bonds of things that were holding her in this world, which were giving her trouble. So she was free from that, and that is what has been shown in this story in a very beautiful manner, showing all the miseries and pains of the girl, and how we can say it has been portrayed in such a way that we understand that the death was the real deliverance for the girl, or was the real freedom and was the real happiness for the girl. So let's get down with the reading and explanation of the chapter. It says, The Little Match Girl, Hans Andersen. And the story is, it was bitterly cold, snow was falling and darkness was gathering, for it was the last evening of the old year. It was New Year's Eve. So it was the New Year's Eve and it was bitter cold. Everybody was inside their house. Why? Because they are obviously celebrating the new year coming up, and at the same time it was winter cold and it is snowing everywhere. That is why nobody wants to be out in the cold. Everybody wants to be near to the fireplace and near to the cozy you can say tables where the feast is being ready for the celebration. So they are all inside enjoying themselves, merrymaking. And just now we see the opposite of this entire happy scenario. There is someone who is having a very difficult, agonizing time at this moment, and that is the young girl who is not given any name in the story. It is, in the cold and gloom, a poor little girl walked bareheaded and barefoot through the streets. She had been wearing slippers, it is true, when she left home, but what good were they? They had been her mother's, so you can imagine how big they were. So she was a picture of entire gloom and sadness, this young girl, because she is walking in that bitter cold when nobody wants to be out. She is bareheaded as well as barefoot, so neither she has anything on her in her feet, and nor she has anything to cover her head or cover her own self. She was not having proper clothing also, and still she had to roam around from street to street because she was out there to sell matchboxes, and she was not ready to go home because she knew at home she will be scolded badly, even might be hit by her father. So it is given she would be scolded badly. So out of fear, she was not ready to go home. She was wearing the slippers when she came from the house, but it is told that meanwhile on her way she lost them, or she somewhere got them misplaced, and that was because those slippers were not of hers, but they were of her mother's. So they were obviously very big in size, and while she was crossing the road at that time, the two carriages came towards her in a very at a great speed, and that is why to save herself she jumped, and one of her slipper came out, and it was taken over by one of the kids, who said, oh, this is such a big slipper that I can use it as a cradle for my son, for my child when they will be born. So he takes it away and runs away, and the other slipper was somewhere misplaced in the drain or somewhere that she was not able to find her. So then we say, the little girl had lost them as she ran across the street to escape from two carriages, and a boy had run off with the other, saying that it would come in very handy as a cradle someday when he had children of his own. So that is how the child lost her slippers, and the other fellow took it away and ran away with her, just playing mischief. So the little girl walked about the street on her naked feet, which were red and blue. If you use the snow, or if you put your hand or your feet on that, you will feel that the snow or the cold is biting it, and suddenly it turns out red, and then it turns out to be blue and black, and that is known as frostbite also. So your hand turns pale and then red, and then that is how the hand turns, and so is her skin. Her feet are said to be a red and blue. That means they are totally going damp and numb because of the cold snow on which she is walking barefoot. In her cold apron, she carried a great many matches, and she had a packet of them in her hand as well. So now it is given she was wearing an apron where she had a lot of matchboxes, and why is she holding all those matchboxes in her pocket, in her hand, everywhere? Because she is out there to sell them. Nobody had bought any from her, and no one had given her a single penny all day. She crept along, shivering and hungry, the picture of misery, poor little thing. So nobody had bought anything, and she is still in a hope that somebody might come and take some matchboxes from her or give her some penny, because without selling anything she could not go home, and she was hungry, she was shivering, and she was like a perfect picture of misery and pain and agony. But still she has to strive, she has to go on that street, because she could not go home as she had not sold anything. And though we see that it is the last evening and everybody inside feasting, enjoying, nobody will be coming out, yet she doesn't lose hope, and she just in hope that she might get someone who can give her some money and take some matchboxes. She keeps on going. The snowflakes fell on her long golden hair, which curled so prettily about her neck, but she did not think of her appearance now. Lights were shining in every window, and there was a glorious smell of roast goose in the street, for this was New Year's Eve and she could not think of anything else. So it was the snowflakes, that means it was snowing, and they fell on her long golden hair, beautiful hair, curly hair on her shoulder, nicely curled. We might picture her to be a very beautiful girl looking very nice, but she is hardly bothered about her looks, about how she looks at the moment, how her curls are, and how the snowflakes are falling on her hair. What she is more worried about, her hunger and about the cold. She can see the lights in every window. Most probably you can understand it's New Year, so most of the houses must be very nicely decorated, and as they are all about to have a feast, they are feasting, they are enjoying merrymaking. So they have roast goose. It's similar to a roasted chicken, but roast goose is another bird. So that is the smell of the roasted goose is everywhere, because every house is having some or the other feast. And irony is, here is a child who is hungry since from the morning, has nothing to eat, and inside in each and every house there's enough of food. They might be wasting it, they are enjoying, relishing it, not knowing the importance of the food, and they are having gala time. Whereas just outside their door there is someone who's really earnestly earning for some particular thing to get, so that she can eat and quench her satisfy her hunger. So here we see she huddled down in a heap in a corner formed by two houses, one of which projected further out into the street than the other. But though she tucked her little legs up under her, she felt colder and colder. Now she just went somewhere and huddled and sat down somewhere near between two houses, where one house came a little ahead of the other house, and there was a small space which was created because, or you can say shade, which was created because of the encroachment of that house, or little further construction of the house. So just next to that wall she sat down, taking that shade as if she would be safe from the snow and cold, but obviously not. So she sat over there, and as she was holding herself tightly, her knees to her chin and her legs touching her body, they felt even more colder. She did not dare to go home, for she had sold no matches and earned not a single penny. Her father would be sure to beat her, and besides, it was so cold at home, for they had nothing but the roof above them, and the wind whistled through that, even though the largest cracks were stuffed with straw and rags. So there are probably two reasons why she does not want to go to home. One, obviously she has not sold anything, and that is why her father is going to scold her very badly. the other thing is, another probable reason is that even if she goes home, there also she won't get any satisfaction, because there would be nothing to eat, of course. Besides that, the whole home is just for the namesake. It is just a shade and from all sides, and it is the sheet or the roof has big cracks, although they are stuffed with straw. Yet when the when the wind blows or there is snowing, the cold wind gets inside the house from all the cracks and all the places, and the house is as cold as the street itself. So it won't be any difference even if she goes home, because it is also going to be cold and bitter cold and all without any food. Her thin hands were almost numb with cold. If only she dared pull just one small match from the packet, strike it on the wall, and warm her fingers. Now she had her hands, her fingers turning numb, and at that time she felt the urge to take out at least one matchstick from her matchboxes and strike it, rub it next to the wall, so that because of the friction the matchstick will light, and because of that matchstick she would feel at least some warmth or some feels little better. And so she did. She pulled one out. Scratch! How it spluttered and burned. It had a warm, bright flame like a tiny candle when she held her hand over it. But what a strange light! It seemed to the little girl as if she was sitting in front of a great iron stove with polished brass knobs and brass ornaments. Now, as this young girl, she took out one particular matchstick and she scratched it. Then suddenly she could feel the warmth of that light, and it did not seem to her like she's holding a matchstick. It felt like she's holding a candle, giving that immense warmth and light to her. And she felt that as if suddenly she saw a vision sort of thing. She could imagine it as if she's sitting in front of a iron stove, which had beautiful brass knobs and brass handles. So it was that kind of warmth and happiness she felt with that small matchstick and its light. The fire burned so beautifully and gave out such a lovely warmth. Oh, how wonderful that was! The child had already stretched her feet to warm them too, when out went the flame. The stove vanished, and there she sat with the burnt match in her hand. So this girl was sitting over there, and as she was holding the matchstick with the warmth, she could imagine she's sitting in front of the stove. She even stretched her legs to feel that warmth, and suddenly while she was enjoying that, the matchstick went out and the flame went out, and so she was holding that entire burnt match. The stove was vanished, the warmth and light, everything was gone, and this made her feel that she is sitting with a burnt matchstick. So she has a chance to take out another matchstick and light it, so that she could have little more of that warmth and happiness which she got from that particular single matchstick. So she struck another. It burned clearly, and where the light fell upon the wall, the bricks became transparent like gauze. She could see right into the room where a shining white cloth was spread on the table. Now when she struck the second matchstick, she saw another vision, and that was, she felt as if the wall by which she was sitting, it had turned, the bricks have gone transparent, and now she can see inside as if she's looking through a glass, and she could see that there was a huge table, feast table, kept over there, on which was covered with a white cloth, and on that it was covered with beautiful china, and in the center of it stood a roast goose stuffed with prunes and apples, steaming deliciously. So on that table there was all the cutlery, china sets kept over there, and right in the center was the roasted goose with all the fruits and things, and decorated and nicely steamed. So it was smelling delicious, probably because she might be smelling it from that particular house, from the windows or somewhere. That is why she was able to imagine that also, because she is very hungry at the moment. And what was even more wonderful was that the goose hopped down from the dish, waddled across the floor with carving knife and fork in its back, waddled straight up to the poor child. Then out went the match, and nothing could be seen but the thick cold wall. So here she felt even more happy when she saw that the goose, has jumped from the table, and it was coming towards it with the knife and fork on its back, stuck on it. and it was coming waddling towards the young girl, and as it came closer to the wall, and she might have felt that she's almost about to grab it or hold it or eat it or have a touch on it, just touch it. So at that very moment, suddenly the flare went out, the flame of the matchstick went out, and then again, once again, she could see that the wall was totally not transparent, opaque. It was totally normal, and everything went out. The vision went away. It vanished, and she was again sitting over there with a burnt matchstick in her hand. Next page we see she struck another match, and suddenly she was sitting under the most beautiful Christmas tree. It was much larger and much lovelier than the one she had seen last year through the glass doors of the rich merchant's house. So now she took out third matchstick, she lit it, and as she saw the flame, suddenly she saw the third vision, and that was a beautiful, magnificent Christmas tree, very, very big, and it was even larger and beautiful and lovelier than what she had seen last year in some rich merchant's house. So that must have been the most beautiful Christmas tree she must have seen. So here, this one was even more beautiful. 1,000 candles lit up the green branches, and gaily colored balls like those in the shop windows looked down upon her. The little girl reached forward with both hands. Then out went the match. So she saw the Christmas tree beautifully decorated. There were candles everywhere, lights everywhere on the Christmas tree, and the balls, Christmas balls or Christmas tree balls, you must have seen in the decoratives. So decorations everywhere. So this is one of the decoratives that has to be put up, ornaments on the tree. So those balls, beautiful color balls, they were all there with the lights and candles, and she was so happy to see them. She wanted to touch them. She was raising her hands to grab them, and as she was trying to reach to those balls, suddenly the light went off. That means the matchstick was burned, and with that particular thing, instantly this Christmas tree also vanished. But here the description is given little gradual. What happened is, the many lights on the Christmas tree rose higher and higher through the air, and she saw that they had now turned into bright stars. One of them fell, streaking the sky with light. "Now someone is dying," said the little girl. For her old grandmother, the only one who had ever been good to her, but who was now dead, had said, "Whenever a star falls, a soul goes up to God." So here, at that time, the Christmas tree vanishes, but those lights which were there decorating the Christmas tree, she could feel that they were rising higher and higher up, and as they reached higher in the sky, she saw that they turned into the beautiful stars. And suddenly she saw one of those stars streaking down, a falling star, and at that time she suddenly uttered this particular word and said, now someone is dying." The irony is, she is talking about herself, and she herself doesn't know that she is about to die. That we come to know later. But here she says it because her grandmother used to tell her when she was alive that whenever a star falls down, a soul goes up to the God. Even her grandmother has passed away now. She struck another match on the wall. Once more there was light, and in the glow stood her old grandmother, oh so bright and shining, and looking so gentle, kind and loving. "Granny," cried the little girl, "oh, take me with you. I know you will disappear when the match is burnt out. You will vanish like the warm stove, the lovely roast goose, and the great glorious Christmas tree." Then she quickly struck all the rest of the matches she had in the packet, for she did so want to keep her grandmother with her. Now she took out another fourth matchstick, and as she lighted it, she saw her grandmother in front of her, and she was so delighted because this was the person who had ever loved her, and she also loved her grandmother a lot. And when she was there in a very beautiful state, kind, gentle, and looking stately, bright and shining, at that time she said, "Oh Granny, please don't go away. I want you to stay with me, because I know as soon as the light will go away, even you will also vanish, just like all the other things that come in front of me, and they vanish, like the stove, the goose, the Christmas tree." So she did not want her grandmother to leave or go away, and that is why, in order to keep her grandmother with her, she took out matches one after the other, and started striking them, lighting them, so that the vision stays with her as long as she can possibly hold her. The matches flared up with such a blaze that it was brighter than broad daylight, and her old grandmother had never seemed so beautiful or so stately before. She took the little girl in her arms and flew with her high up, oh, so high, towards glory and joy. Now they knew neither cold nor hunger nor fear, for they were with God. So suddenly she lighted all the matchsticks she had, and there was immense light. It was the entire area illuminated with those matchstick lights. And then she felt as if her grandmother is raising her hands, has asked her to come towards her, and she held her granddaughter, and with this particular vision she saw that she is going upwards to the sky with her grandmother, and suddenly she could feel everything going down small, and she was high up in the sky with the stars and lights. And now suddenly she felt that she do not feel any cold, she does not feel any particular hunger, and she is feeling very happy, very contented, because now she is going in all the glory and joy to in the presence of her God, and that too with the person whom she loves so much, her grandmother. But in the cold dawn, in the corner formed by the two houses, sat the little girl with rosy cheeks and smiling lips, dead, frozen to death on the last evening of the old year. The dawn of the new year rose on the huddled figure of a girl. She was still holding the matches, and half a packet had been burned. So here the next morning, when people started coming out of their houses, they came to the dawn of the 1st of January, the new year, celebrating. They could see this young girl, the dead body of this young girl, lying over there at that corner of the house, and it was still having those rosy cheeks and a smile on her face, and she was frozen to death. Now here people felt that it was a very pitiable sight. The girl was holding all the matchbox. Half the matchbox was burnt. The matches were burned. Matchsticks were lying everywhere, and the girl died. So they could assume that she was trying to keep herself warm, but they could not understand why she was smiling when she was feeling so much of cold. They hardly knew what beautiful things she saw in her visions, and what a beautiful place she has gone with the person whom she loved so much, and now so much more contented and so much more happy she is. So for her it was a happy ending, whereas people might consider that it was a sad demise or sad ending for the young soul, but they did not realize what a beautiful deliverance it was for the young girl. She was evidently trying to warm herself, people said, but no one knew what beautiful visions she had seen, and in what a blaze of glory she had entered with her dear old grandmother into the heavenly joy and gladness of the new year. So now onwards she would be celebrating the new year, the new life, and life eternal with the Lord Almighty, with his Lord, and that too in the presence of the Lord. She will be always there with her grandmother. So she was so happy. She must be very happy, and that is something which has been considered as a blessing to her. The death was like a blessing in disguise, and that is why the death became the real happiness for this girl, because she was totally, you can say, suppressed, burdened by the miseries of the world. Family, her father's, but especially mother also, were pushing her out to the limits to get something, and poor soul could not deliver to it, and that is why she has to arrest her case, and she died. Though she died, but she died a happy death, because we believe, and as the writer has mentioned, we believe that she was in the presence of God and she was very happy with her grandmother. People might think that it was sad that she was trying to keep herself warm, but they did not know what real happiness she got. So that is how the story comes to an end. That's the story of the little match girl. So I hope you have understood the story. With this we come to the end of the story. Next module we will be starting up with the next story explanation, the revision. So we'll end up this video over here.